beginning always explains the how and the why. Why we like what we like, want what we want, and see the world how we see it. So, here is my beginning. I was the middle child of 3 girls. Our first names were Joyce, Jacqueline, and Jessica. And our middle names all began with the letter E. I grew up with a very loving mother and both parents in the home, if you can call it that, because, you see, my father came home very late every night, got up very early and made it to work every day. Kazi grew up where no matter what you did every night or every weekend, you carried your happy ass to work every day and took care of home even if you didn't stay home much. Like functional alcoholics or men who work hard and like to play just as hard. I don't blame them. Just gotta know when it's time to go home is all. Reminds me of this bus driver who used to get so drunk every weekend. He would be sleeping on the ground near the projects I grew up in, and, 'cause he was a man, nobody thought too much about it. But on Monday morning you was sure to greet him at the bus stop if you rode the bus he drove during the week. But as for my dad, on the weekends, he didn't come home at all. Until Sunday night. And this was every weekend for all of my childhood. Maybe he slept at the bar they say he was part owner of in Brooklyn, or maybe my young mind wasn't able to see the obvious, or I didn't let it. All I remember is that he was always a stranger to 3 little girls, and I guess that was okay to him because he didn't try to change it. I realized at an early age he'd rather hang out with the boys and drink and party and be with other women, rather than stay home with a woman that did not drink or smoke or curse, though mama would say the word shit if she was mad enough. But I felt he really didn't want the 3 girls he obviously didn't know what to do with. I'm sure he wanted boys, but he got us. I remember how Kobe Bryant would always be with his daughters and how that younger one was just like him. It was obvious he loved his daughters and constantly doted on them. I always wondered what that was like. Or when women say, I was always a daddy's girl. Man, that must have been awesome to be a daddy's girl. I think I always wanted a father that I was close to because I had no brothers, and though my mother had over 7 brothers, I didn't get to know them that much when I was younger. They lived far away, but not that far, to be honest, that they couldn't have reached out to us more. But I guess they were busy doing their own thing and didn't know there were 3 little girls with a father that was mostly absent that needed other men in their lives. Or that the middle one felt suffocated and lost more times than not. But there are things you don't understand when you're young that you don't ever understand, and so you just shrug your shoulders and say, fuck it, and keep it moving. My younger sister always lived as if she could do nothing without my mother. My oldest sister suffered from lupus, and she suffered hard during a time when there were no support groups or people talking about it. There was no beautiful celebrity like Toni Braxton to give you hope and help you believe in yourself. Reality TV was nothing like it is now. In fact, at the beginning, only one hospital in the Bronx could treat her, and it was very far from our Harlem apartment. Many evenings after school and mommy got off work, we rode the city bus and did our homework on the long ride to take my sister to see her doctors. As I got older, I immediately gravitated towards the hazy psychedelic high I got from smoking weed because it helped me escape my thoughts and feelings when writing wasn't easily available to me. Because I often carried my family's issues on my shoulders, and many times my sister's sickness was too much to carry. I was young and doing my thing, hanging out with my girls and mostly being a third wheel until I met him at a late-night club in Harlem on Valentine's Day. And that's how it began. Getting to know somebody, you tell them about your family dynamics because that's what makes you the person you are. So while getting to know this dude, I shared about my family and how I often felt like a thin piece of meat between 2 thick slices of bread. The bread was my sister's. And how I often kept quiet, staying in the background, trying not to stress my mom out or be a burden that I knew the others were sometimes. So from a very young age, I filled thick notebooks with my private thoughts and feelings that a small diary would not have been able to hold. He told me he had a brother who died in the streets at the age of 15. Not by gangs or bullets met for him, or random, which often happens in the hood. But he was riding on his bike and a taxi hit him. I could instantly see and feel his mother's pain running out of her building, screaming a scream that bounced off the project's walls, off the building's stoops, the gutter down below, and the busy city streets. A mother's wail for a suddenly unalive son. Her firstborn. For his family, that tragedy instantly changed everything, as it should have. I remember a picture shown to me the first time I met his mom and sister, of his mother leading her remaining 4 children in a prayer at the gravesite of our eldest child. We hear news stories. But when the lights go off of the reporter's camera, the flame of a mother's grief remains. Years later, she told me that every day at a certain time, she would go to her window and always look out at the exact time that her eldest son would usually come home on his bike. I'm sure she always saw his face and dreamed of conversations she wished she could still have with her son. She would tell him about her day and how his siblings was doing and if he was okay. As for me and her middle son, we were just 2 young souls from the hood with an instant connection born from shared trauma. A bond that drew us closer. And there wasn't a day that we went without seeing each other. Not one afternoon where we didn't link up after work, or an evening and weekend that we didn't spend time together. And like it is with most women, my friends became second, third, and fourth to him. And when I was with him, it was the only time I didn't focus all my thoughts on my oldest sister and her illness, or my father's absence, or the crazy shit that went down in the projects almost daily. We became inseparable, carving out our own space in a quiet Queens apartment where we had rented an apartment from a couple. It was just us against the world until life threw a curveball I never saw coming. Look, you gotta admit, after reliving all that shit, I definitely could use a cold brew. What you thinking about? Buy us a cup in the link in the description, then drop me a message and tell me all about it.